A big election coming up, as you probably know. A lot of offices and things are up for grabs. One of them is the city attorney, and one of the candidates is with us right now. Bryan Pease is a local attorney. You might know his name. He has been the champion of the seals at the La Jolla Children's Pool, otherwise known as the La Jolla Seal Pool, because that's who's taking it over. Good morning.
Good morning, Bryan.
Good morning,
Happy to be
Bryan.
here. Yeah.
Hey, can we start with that, because this is your issue. And tomorrow, they open up that whole thing down there. For folks who are not familiar, it's the seals at the Children's Pool in La Jolla. They will lift the rope because the pupping season is over. Then what happens?
Yeah, so I'm a public interest attorney, and a lot of the cases I handle have to do with protecting the environment. The La Jolla seals was a long-running case where it was actually a perfect example of where the city, it was an example of one of the things that the city attorney's office kind of bungled, because they ended up not enforcing what the city council and the mayor over the years had been trying to do, which was to pass this plan that we now have in place that has a rope barrier that keeps tourists a safe distance from the seals during non-pupping season, and then during the pupping season, December through May, this rookery, which is a scientific term for where the seals rest, give birth, and nurse their young, is closed off to humans, so people can go there and watch and enjoy seeing the seals, and they don't go down and take selfies with them and sit their kids on the seals, and the crazy things you see people do when the rookery is open during pupping season. So the city council, they wanted this plan in place, but the city's own planning commission denied the necessary permits, and I had to bring suit on behalf of environmental organizations to actually defend what the city council and the mayor wanted, and the city attorney ended up defending the planning commission, which is appointed by the council. So it's this, and nobody knows why it ended up going through that way, but I had to challenge it. And as city attorney, I would hope to be able to make sure that we get the city agencies on the same page, and we also aren't defending, internal agencies of the city against the will of the elected city council and the mayor.
And that kind of leads us as to why do you want to run for city attorney?
Well, I've seen a lot of problems, and as a public interest lawyer, I focus on government transparency and accountability, consumer and environmental protection, freedom of speech and assembly. And a lot of these cases, I have to go up against the city attorney's office. I'm the only candidate who's won cases against the city attorney's office in both civil and criminal, and those are two aspects that the city attorney's office handles. A misdemeanor prosecution, they don't do felonies, they do misdemeanor prosecution, and all civil cases for the city of San Diego. And the cases that I've won against the city have been important constitutional rights cases where people have been prosecuted improperly for things like handing out flyers in a public forum, registering voters, if you can believe it. There have been some really crazy cases where the city attorney's office has been on the wrong side of the law and the wrong side of the public interest. Now, that's not to say that everything they do is wrong. They do a lot of things right. It's a big office. They employ about 145 attorneys. And of course, the city itself as an entity has, hundreds of people making decisions all the time. And so something's going to get screwed up. But what you want to make sure is it's really the city attorney's role to make sure that once something like that comes to light, you very quickly move to remedy the situation, and you don't just keep litigating and driving up costs, litigation costs and fees, which we see happen a lot because the deputy city attorneys handling these cases, it's not their, it's not, they have no personal stake in the outcome. So if they're, litigating it very aggressively, even though the city might be on the wrong side of the law, ultimately that's going to be attorney's fees that the city is often going to have to pay to the public interest attorney bringing suit, which in some cases is me. And I'd rather be the elected city attorney to correct these problems before they start, and to make sure that we can correct a lot of these issues on a system-wide level rather than just on a case-by-case ad hoc basis.
There's a lot of approaches to this job. The current city attorney appears to be just sort of plays it by the book. When things come to him, he has a legal ruling, he puts it out, he does it. The guy before him, Mike Aguirre, was very much an activist attorney. Where would you fall in that spectrum?
Well, and Jan Goldsmith, the current city attorney, does certainly come across as just very narrowly applying the law before him, and usually that's the case. But there have been certain when you come across that way, it's also easier to kind of get away with some stuff. And so we've seen examples where he's taken a certain approach that for better or for worse, has had a political bent to it. And
such as?
So, well, for instance, wording of the Proposition B, which stripped city employees of their pensions. I think that voters were somewhat misled on that, and the city attorney's office played a big role in the wording of that. And the city attorney's office has also played a role in how to word the minimum wage ordinance that's going on the ballot. And I'm a Democrat. I'm very much in favor of raising the minimum wage and making sure that voters are given the correct, neutral arguments on this, and not arguments that are put out by the Lincoln Club or folks that want to suppress the minimum wage. And on Prop B, I was a strong supporter of keeping city pensions in place, not the bloated ones that were
the drop
pointed
program.
to. Yeah,
where I just read there's a fire captain who made $890,000 last year.
Yeah, so that's what people point to. But then what about the librarian is making $30,000, and then you take away their pensions, and city employees don't get Social Security, and so that's what people don't necessarily understand, is that the city needs to provide an equivalent program. A 401k is not an equivalent program. So I was very much vocally against Prop B. Another example.
So you would be activist. You would be an active city attorney.
I guess my point is that Jan Goldsmith is sort of an activist. My point is that
in a quiet way.
In a quiet way.
Unlike Micah Geary.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, want to be a disruptive force. I would want to say, here's what's really going on. Another example is the convention center. Back in 2012, I was vocally saying, look, this is illegal. You're going to put this you need to put this on the ballot if you want to raise hotel taxes in order to pay for a convention center. And Jan Goldsmith said, well, the business community wants to try it. Let's just try it. And look what happened. We ended up with a lawsuit.
It's illegal.
Yeah. Now, another example, now fast forward, now that we have the Chargers ballot initiative, that's an example where, I think the city is leaving money on the table with hotel taxes. And the Chargers plan, it raises hotel taxes to build a stadium. Not necessarily such a bad idea if that's what the voters want. And that's the point, is you need to put it on the ballot in order to raise taxes.
Which we know will happen.
Yeah. Another thing that the city attorney is not doing right now that I would very aggressively want to start doing is making sure that developers are being held to the standard that they are required to be building low-income, affordable housing. There's a legal obligation, there's a moral obligation to do that. In San Diego, unlike a lot of other cities, they're getting away with just building these very expensive units for higher income, and then look at how the housing population has exploded. Some of my opponents have taken a lot of money from developers. One in particular, who's a port commissioner, has taken a lot of money from developers, yet is running as the candidate who's going to somehow help raise people out of poverty. Well, how can you do that when you're representing developers who are keeping people in poverty by not building affordable housing? And even when they're getting subsidies and tax breaks to build affordable housing units, they're doing it in a way that they're building larger units to house less people because there's a higher profit margin. So that's something I would investigate as city attorney.
All right. Well, there are many issues. There's a whole mountain full of them out there.
No kidding. Yeah. Bryan Pease, thank you very much for coming in. Bryan Pease running for San Diego City Attorney. Appreciate it, and good luck.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sure we'll hear from you again in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah. June 7th is going to be here before we all know it.
Got it.